Hey guys, we're going to talk a little bit tonight about the historical approaches, the critiques, and everything that were done on Jonathan Edwards. So let's get started. If one were to look at the historiographical approaches of Jonathan Edwards, his world, his legacy, that person would find that he was a very intriguing person. The Edwards of History and the Edwards of Faith, written by R. Brian Baderman, shows that the legacy set forth by the person that we know as Jonathan Edwards leaves one that influenced a great deal of American Calvinism and had been highly influential during the 18th century of the church. However, I would go as far as to argue that he's even influential during our time in the 21st century. Much of the great of the argument founded in this work is that of pointing to works of other writers. If we were to look at another work, such as A Dortian Philosophy of Jonathan Edwards, Calvin, and Reformed Orthodoxy by Kenneth McKema, we find a different methodology. When looking at the Dortian Philosophy, we find a comparison to the teachings and theology taught by John Calvin and the Reformed beliefs. In these two comparisons, we find that there are many similarities as well, such as the fact that, a quote, like Calvin, Edwards did not restrict himself to a literal interpretation of Scripture. He believed that those endowed by the Spirit could read Scripture in new ways. However, we also find differences, such as a quote saying, here Edwards resembles Calvin on a sanctified basis, but Edwards goes further. Edwards realized that this expanded typology was controversial, but in a notebook on types, he eloquently defended his position and his vision that bodies were the shadows of a being, of a person, that the person was more than just that. In yet another comparison, we find a complete review of the historical writings about Jonathan Edwards, and that they are another way to show the legacy. In their review entitled Before the Young, the Restless, and the Reformed, we find Oliver D. Crisp and Douglas A. Sweeney alluding to a more interactive approach of Jonathan Edwards in the breakdown of his influence to the church. We find that through this interpretation that Jonathan Edwards' influence on post-World War II evangelicals really begins to shine through. We find this through explanations and quotes such as Edwards functioned for Gershner in the 1980s as he had done 3 decades earlier, as a proponent of both head-informed and heart-filled religion. Many today misunderstand Edwards and Christianity precisely at this point. The historic Christian position has been, in spite of the prevailing contemporary notion to the contrary, a reason plus faith synthesis. Many today think that faith minus reason is the Christian position because it's so common in our time. That, however, is a character of Christian belief, not a character, a caricature of Christian belief. If one looks at the whole history of Christian thought, it is the reason plus faith synthesis of Jonathan Edwards which emerges dominant. This abstract, along with the other review, is one that shows that Mr. Edwards did not merely affect the people of his time and impacted the church reformation and revitalization. He continues to affect even down to our time in the 21st century. I hope you guys kind of took a quick synopsis of this and were able to take something out of it. Wish you guys luck. God bless.